Well, everybody's concerned about vitamin deficiencies, mineral deficiencies, far more causative and preventive for disease than vitamins. Matter of fact, vitamins don't even work without minerals. Well, we're going to talk about specific mineral deficiencies and how that lines up with certain conditions, right? Memory, sleep, thyroid, adrenals. Oh, and what's the most accurate way to actually test for mineral deficiencies? Check out this episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cellular Healing TV. I'm Ashley Smith, and our guest today is Barton Scott. Barton is a chemical engineer, nutritionist, and he's the founder of Upgraded Formulas, a nanotech company focused around performance and longevity, specifically with a focus on correcting mineral deficiency. Barton is here to discuss the patterns and relationships between how you feel and your mineral balance. It's more important than you think when addressing root cause. I cannot wait to learn more, so let's get started and welcome Barton Scott and, of course, Dr. Pompa to the show. Welcome, both of you.
Oh, thank you so much, Ashley.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you being on the show. This is a very important topic. A lot of talk always about vitamins, right? Vitamins. And I've always been a believer that minerals are actually what start the fire, right? They're more important than vitamins. And yet, when do we talk about vitamin or when do we talk about minerals? It's always vitamins. Even I am victim of that. I just did a video recently of the 5 big deficiencies of vitamins. Well, some of them were minerals actually, but we're rarely talking about mineral deficiencies. That's part of this show that I think is going to be very helpful to people. What minerals are for sleep? What minerals are best for adrenals, thyroid, immunity, which is hot right now, right? Anxiety. So there are specific minerals that we can be deficient in to drive those symptoms, but also help mitigate a lot of those symptoms. So let's jump right in. But I want to hear your story, man, because you were sick like me. And when I was sick, I did a hair analysis, which we'll talk about, which I believe is the best way to look at mineral content. Right. And I had massive deficiencies and overloaded in other minerals. And, we'll talk about that because obviously a lot of people have mineral deficiencies, period. But tell your story, Barton.
Oh my God. Well, thank you for that intro and everything. For me, it started in my early 20s. I was finishing up chemical engineering, and I just started to lose my memory, my short-term memory. Long-term was fine, but it was like evaporating.
Yeah.
And
I've been there. I know what that feels like.
Yeah, you've been there, and you just go, what the hell? Like I'm lucky enough to be able to pay for and eat really good food, like organic everything.
Right.
Even at 10 years ago, I cut out toxic triggers like gluten, dairy, soy. I'm thinking like, I know I'm eating a better, I know I'm eating a better diet. What is going on? And I oddly enough, I also do a hair analysis at this point, among about $10,000 of other testing, all in a pretty tight period of about less than a year. And I look at a couple different labs, and I'm kind of looking like, is this usable data? And I finally found something that really, and it correlated across a couple different labs. I was chronically deficient in a couple minerals that I had been taking large amounts of from quality brands. So I felt like I could really trust that it wasn't a quality issue. That, in other words, what I mean for people listening is I knew that if it said 400 milligrams, it would contain 400 milligrams, and it was sourced well. Right. So luckily, fast forward to 2020, I feel like that's a pretty low bar, a pretty set bar in most cases. Mm-hmm. And so quality is just like kind of a given. But as a chemical engineer, the thing that we get trained in addition to having basically a minor in chemistry, a minor in math, and almost a minor in physics, is that we have a major discipline in chemical engineering, and that's really around the thermodynamics of and the physics of absorption as it relates to actual, not theory. I mean, that's part of what we learn, but we do a lot of actual hands-on stuff you can't do outside of school, really, in processes and building processes and making, really what chemies get paid for is you go to a company that's doing billions of dollars a year and they're like, we want to increase by 3%, and you're like, okay, got it. That's your entire job, is increasing efficiencies. So I had this like lens that otherwise seems kind of like alien. And, I started thinking like, well, this is, my first thought is like, even though my brain's barely working, it seems like I'm like, this is an absorption issue. This is not just me.
Yeah.
Like I'd been an athlete, I'd been a wrestler, so I was sweating since I was like 8 or 9, all the way through high school, like 2-a-days, and just not eating that much, and watching what you're actually taking in. So I was nutrient deficient. I had induced hypothyroidism, all sorts of issues. I mean, just like you, Dr. Pampa and Ashley. I mean, like we're all here because we struggled along the way, and then we didn't give up. We were like, oh, I'm not going to accept this, especially early. So if this had happened to me in my 70s or 80s or 90s, I might have been like, oh, well, this is just getting old. But I knew, like, all right, I have big plans for life. There's a lot I want to do here, and a lot of people I want to help in some way. I didn't know how at that point, but I remember thinking, this is like, I'm not well enough to solve it now, but I think I know where to start, and that's just taking a process and improving upon it. So, that just became the beginning of the journey.
Yeah.
Here we are about 8 years later. So
yeah, no doubt. And just like anything else, I mean, pain to purpose, you've dedicated your life to making, better minerals and really putting together an incredible process in a company. And I have to say, here's some of my favorites right here. This magnesium and the iodine. I love it. Love both of the products. But let's talk about let's make it very
two of my
specific.
favorites as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I'm most proud of them. I have them like right here too.
Yeah, no, right. I just ran back and grabbed them right off my counter.
It's so cool. And iodine, real quick, for anyone listening, has been shown, not just our iodine, but iodine in general, has been shown to be antiviral, which means if you put it in a petri dish with viruses, they cease to replicate.
Yeah.
Granted, I think the RDA for iodine is just stupendously low at 150 micrograms. Japan eats about 12 milligrams per day. So, just a huge increase there. So, but it's linked to intelligence too.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's
it's
right.
really
IQ.
key. We can get into that more later.
Yeah, IQ, it is. I mean, that's why. And by the way, iodine we might as well go in that direction. It's one of the things in the soils that is very depleted. I mean, of course, they used to put it in bread, right? It's like, so, but, hey, we don't even, then it was salt, right? The salt in the bread, so anyways, adding it to salt was a big deal. Bromine, was added to the breads and the salts too. But anyway, the bottom line is that it's deficient in the soils, and it plays a significant role in the brain development in a child. Studies show linked to IQ, which is huge, solid studies. And when I talk about the 5 big deficiencies that I mentioned earlier, iodine is one of them. So is magnesium, by the way. So these two make up what I feel most Americans are in fact deficient in. But let's have the iodine conversation for thyroid, because I know if I asked you what are the minerals related to thyroid, you would talk about iodine. There's a lot of controversy around iodine and thyroid, because some believe that autoimmune thyroid Hashimoto's shouldn't take iodine, but I'm here to say that my doctors as well, we couldn't help people get over Hashimoto's or their body correct Hashimoto's without iodine. You just have to start slow and low. But for me, it's, you can't battle these thyroid conditions, even Hashimoto's, without it. What is your take?
100%. So thankful that you said that. Like it's one of the things that I'm glad we went straight to this, that really, really upsets me when I hear people. It's just like, it's chemistry, guys. It's not an opinion. The mineral that's most important, there's many, but the mineral that's most important for your thyroid is iodine. Certainly, and how are we going to argue that we want to continue producing thyroid hormone without having a key constituent for the process? It's like if you're running a paper mill and you're not putting any inputs into the system, or you're drastically reducing those inputs, and you have maybe 5 inputs, and you're like, oh, well, we're just going to completely shut down number 4 over here, or number 1. Is the end product going to be the same? Is the thyroid going to then cease to really output? And I mean, these are building blocks for thyroid hormone, and just essential for the body. So yeah, a lot of people are walking around with poor metabolisms, cold hands, cold feet, low body temp, all these things.
Hair thinning, which is
hair thinning.
Very important. Yeah. I mean, women, when we talk about thinning hair, yes, hair falls out, but even the texture of the hair, literally iodine, plays a very, very important role there. And again, I think that, there's different theories for why iodine, don't take iodine for Hashimoto's or autoimmune thyroid, because people can get what is called a thyroid storm. And that is correct if you take a lot at once, if you have Hashimoto's. And there's different theories for that. It can be a detox theory where it chases off a lot of different types of chemicals, including heavy metals, off the sites. And there's other theories.
Right.
But the bottom line is my experience has been the opposite. You can't help that condition without iodine, and you just have to start with drops. And that's why I love your product here, because it's done with a liquid where you can start low and slow. And work up to these molecular doses that you need, literally, to fix your thyroid. And again, that's not my opinion. I believe it's solid in the literature. So, what other minerals for the thyroid would you suggest?
Yeah, so I really like selenium as well.
That would have been mine. I just wanted to see what you said.
I created a product I'm really, really proud of called Peak Thyroid, PEAK. I have it over there at the counter. I could grab it later, but it's a balanced ratio, and it has a little bit of iodine in it. And I created that for anyone. I mean, and it just has a small amount of iodine. And so that way, if you had Hashimoto's or something, you could still take 1 dose a day and get that, because I'm really of the belief from everything I've read and experienced and talked with other people that you need some of it.
Yeah.
So we have a blend of minerals there, and it's 50% zinc, and we have a good amount of copper, because we find when you're zinking.
Well, lost your sound. You hit your mute button by accident. Yeah, you hit your own mute button somehow. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah. There we go.
When your copper and zinc, that those two work together, then it affects the absorption. It affects the other minerals in the thyroid.
Exactly. I mean, so these are really, it's a blend of the 4 most key minerals, but you showed upgraded magnesium there, and that's also important. Manganese is also important, but those 4 I feel they can be very synergistic, and then from a chemical perspective, they play well together. So that's the other thing is that we just I just put things together that actually do, from a chemical basis, work together.
Yeah.
Not everything does. People that take a multivitamin that has iron in it, I really don't agree with that.
Right.
Yeah. So that, I mean, there's a number of examples, but some things are synergistic. I just like taking large doses of things for immune support. I know that's something else we could. I also used to. I'm very familiar with the research. I used to take large doses of vitamin C. I don't anymore because I understand that one mineral, one vitamin affects all the rest.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true. To your iron point, a lot of people have high ferritin, which is very oxidative. Taking more iron can be more oxidative. We know it's linked to strokes, other conditions, and then vitamin C can also actually, high dose C can actually upregulate more iron. Not just in a condition called hemochromatosis, but in just average people as well. So you have to be a little careful.
Absolutely. One thing that, if to touch on what you just said about iron, there are so many people that exhibit symptoms of anemia that doctors say, well, you take iron, or nutritionists. I mean, a number of people make this mistake. It's part of the reason why I like to test for minerals. Because you get to see them at least all at once, like whatever the measuring device was, you see them all on the same board. But when you take too much iron, what happens there? So iron is, I mean, you can induce early aging, premature aging, which we all care about. We all want to feel younger. I mean, looking younger is great, but feeling younger is great, and the cells just won't work. But you start to push out copper when you take too much iron. And then symptoms get even worse. And I mean, same thing with vitamin C. If you take too much vitamin C, you'll start to absorb iron even better. And then what happens? You push out copper. So same problem. And then you start to dysregulate copper and zinc.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a relationship there. We'll talk about the testing in a moment, but let's kind of rip through some of these main things here. Adrenals, what type of mineral deficiencies do we associate?
Yeah, so adrenals, what I tell people is the currency that your adrenals spend in, and these are little glands that sit on top of your kidneys. They're really small, but they're really important, and they spend in a currency of magnesium, potassium, and sodium primarily. Without the right balance, not only just enough, but the right balance.
A great potassium product, by the way, that many of our keto people absolutely love too. So
yeah, upgraded potassium. I just made that. I've made it very concentrated, so we'll come out with a larger size soon because people are asking for it. But I add it to my water all the time. Like if I'm going to the gym, I'll put in some sea salt and I'll put in some of that, and it's just good because I'll do RO water, and I just kind of want to bring it back to life with some minerals. But yeah, thank you for that. So upgraded potassium is awesome for adrenal support. Upgraded magnesium, you can take our products like out of the capsule if you have cramps, and I've seen it really stop cramps quickly in a number of people right there in person. So it's I mean, you don't have to digest it, so it really works quickly. It's amazing. But yeah, sodium's important too. A lot of people, if they're doing keto, they're just burning through these big three so quickly. And you might be saving money on food, but you need to reinvest it into these minerals that are really providing electricity for your body.
Yeah, sodium, potassium are the basics of how your cell works, and your adrenals can really burn them down. And when you move into keto, you're dumping glycogen, which is stored sugar, very normal, but you're excreting a lot of these electrolytes and minerals. So, taking them is really important.
I got to say too, on that, thank you for writing the book that you did, because I did a 5-day fast for the first time this year. Actually, I'd never done 5 days, and by the end of the 5th day, I felt like I'd never been smarter.
Yeah, that's true.
Just like it was interesting. Yeah,
it is true. The ketones go so high. right? It's like the
Yeah.
brain has so much extra energy that it just taps in, right? So
I literally did what I felt like was 2 weeks of work in
yeah,
about 2 hours.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree
Yeah.
more. So what about sleep? People ask me all the time, are there any minerals specific that help sleep?
Absolutely. Yeah. So understanding, that about 80% of people are magnesium deficient. Magnesium is a component for melatonin, a really key one. And it's kind of that paper mill analogy we talked about. You can't really make enough melatonin if you don't have enough of the constituents, right? So that's a great one. That's a really, really important one.
Okay, magnesium is one I always recommend. Calcium has been used for improved sleep for many
Yeah.
years. I mean, that I
Yeah. Absolutely. Calcium's up there too. Calcium is sedative as well. And there's a product right now. We'll probably rename it soon just so more people sort of realize that it could benefit them. Currently, it's called Upgraded Bone Strong, and it has calcium, it has magnesium, and it has boron in it. Boron is also
yeah,
synonymous with intelligence. It's good for testosterone production as well. Yeah, it's a really, really cool one. You just need small amounts of it. So it's really, really hard to test for, but you do need it. Because that one thing I will say is taking calcium by itself is, just something that people listening, you really want to be careful of that.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, totally. Which, by the way, was so enraged through the 80s and 90s. It was like everyone. It was like every calcium product. Back then, I didn't know what I know now, but I had a philosophy, and I'm like, that can't be good. I'm like, that can't be good. That's going to build up in your bones and your arteries potentially. And again, these were just my thoughts, and as it turned out to be right. You can't absorb calcium without sufficient vitamin D levels, magnesium levels. K2 has a lot to do with the absorption. Which actually brings up a point, right? So we're talking about deficiencies. We're talking about so many people have mineral deficiencies. Obviously sunscreen plays a role here, right? People lacking vitamin D. Obviously glyphosate, the chemical sprayed on all our food, plays a role here, depleting soils dramatically. In my stress levels, am I missing anything? I just want people to understand why mineral deficiencies are so prevalent.
100%, all of those things. We are redlining at our desk. Is something I've realized. We get hyped up on too much caffeine. We don't move enough. Our cortisol ramps up quickly. We carry trauma. All of these cause faster mineral depletion and topsoil eroding from something like 18 inches on average to 3 or so in the last 50 or 100 years is not helped. So even though we are eating and making efforts to do more regenerative agriculture, we need to do it faster and we need to do more of it. So I try to not only do organic, but I try to support those, which there are more and more of those farms that are doing different biodynamic and regenerative sort of methods. That's a long-term solution to what we need right now.
Yeah.
So the short-term solution is making it easier for your body to accept electrons from the food that it gets, and that's what we're doing with minerals. So our whole line for anyone listening is minerals, because as I started to lose, later on, as I'm studying, losing, memory, and I lose someone really close to me, I lose a parent, I lose my mother to degenerative diseases, I start to think about longevity. I was born to older parents. We knew that things like that would happen, but I also knew that for someone that could afford modern healthcare, that was retired, that was living a pretty low stress life, that was doing pretty well from a diet perspective, but was not getting better because was not a diet after a certain point doesn't make much of a difference. I know that's a controversial thing to say,
No,
but it absolutely doesn't
my
if you have
saying, by the
severe
way,
deficiencies.
my saying, by the way, is a perfect diet today, whatever that is,
Yeah.
will not get you well. You might
Yeah.
not get well without a really good diet, but it's
Exactly.
not. I mean, people are struggling today. They're eating this, and perfect, and etc., and not even losing weight on whatever the perfect diet is.
I couldn't say it better.
So I mean, when we look at what we're under, I just so people know, I kind of just threw that out there. Glyphosate is a chemical being used massively. It's in 60% of rainfall. How it works, by the way, folks, how it keeps pests away, weeds from growing, is it depletes minerals. That's what it does. It literally pulls minerals to kill weeds. I mean, this is what it's designed.
Oh my God.
The problem is it does it in our body, but it's doing it in the soil. So now we have depleted soils. Oh, but don't worry, because they've spent millions and millions of dollars on putting minerals back in the soil in the form of fertilizers. Oh, if it were only so simple, right?
Oh God, yeah, the NPK sort of fallacy, of nitrogen.
Yeah, I mean, the plants are growing. The plants pull the minerals in, and then that's how we really get our minerals, is via the ionized minerals in the plants. And so now we're deficient, in that. So I just want people to hear that. And then, another thing, Barton, is heavy metals. I mean, this is my specialty, and we pull heavy metals out of people, where people are loaded with heavy metals. Heavy metals replace where minerals actually should work. And that's another big problem, creating deficiencies, or like even you said, right? People are trying to, take minerals and they're not absorbing it. Heavy metals can be actually the problem there, which is a whole nother subject. I don't want to get you distracted on that.
Sure.
But I do want you to say one thing before we talk about the testing of it, right? Because people are going to want, like, well, how can I accurately test this? But I want to say, I want you to talk about why I made the comment in the beginning that minerals are more important than vitamins, and that they're the sparks. Kind of explain that to people, because that's maybe why too diet doesn't always do it. Explain the minerals' role in nutrition.
Absolutely. So minerals are activators. They're the spark plugs. So if you have a combustion engine and you don't have a spark, you don't have combustion, even though you have all the other necessary components at your disposal. Simply, that's it. To say that is to quote a Nobel Prize winner, Linus Pauling. The other aspect of it, though, that's interesting is, they activate so many enzymatic functions in the body. So when we're low in magnesium, this is one of the things that when people fix, so when you take upgraded magnesium, the very first night, most people sleep better, because most people are deficient in it. If you don't notice much of a change, you either didn't take enough, or you just don't have a deficiency, or you're just not very in touch with your body, frankly. I think from being a wrestler and understanding, like, I ate a Snickers bar and I absolutely couldn't even finish practice. And, like at an early age, I started to develop this like mind-body connection. And I realized, like, pasta doesn't actually make me feel good, even though everyone's talking about carb loading. Maybe there's something with that. And now we know it's things like glyphosate that in addition to everything Dr. Pompa just mentioned, it also, glyphosate also goes through the lining of the gut and creates impermeability, which is a huge problem. A huge problem. If that doesn't scare you into eating organic, I don't know what will. So, so use fear as a good motivator here, and start voting with your dollar. If you aren't already, I'm sure if you're listening to this, you probably are, because this is just an amazing resource for so many topics. Magnesium, though, you start to feel better because when you imagine up to 800 or so enzymatic functions working better, these things don't really work without that.
That's what
electron driving force.
Yeah, that's what I wanted people to understand. The minerals are the electron driving force. They are the sparks. Nothing works. Your vitamins don't work. The engine doesn't fly without minerals in the cell, and that's what people have to understand. Okay, So,
Yeah, and when we're fasting too, we're making a lot of, we're pulling from fat stores. We're getting that. I also, during that 5-day fast, I haven't done it without our minerals, but I took our minerals throughout the fast, and I felt really good. I put in like 8 to 12-hour days throughout the 5-day fast that I did, and I felt really, really good. So just to make sure and those are 0 calorie, but I say that because when the body has enough stored fat, when you have enough minerals, you can, and you get enough sunlight too. You mentioned sunscreen, so getting enough sunlight and activating a number of different pathways through that, you really can sustain life for a very long time. Now, that's a huge asterisk by that, like do that under supervision, obviously, but wouldn't you say?
What's funny is there was I don't know if you watch it, probably not, but Naked and Afraid, right? And my theory was, my whole thing was, these people, they make such the big deal, right? It's like without food, right? It's like they're looking for food and they're like exhausting themselves, right? It's like my strategy would be, I'd go there and just fast for 21 days, right? And I'm like, that's the simplest thing to do. I'd build a shelter the first few days, and that's all I would do. And I would hang out in the sun in my shelter. Well, this gal on there finally did this, right? Her team hated her because it was like that. She was just like doing nothing, right? She was like, I don't need food. She's like, she found a mineral rich source of water. She was drinking water and laying in the sun. And here's the funny thing. They criticized her. She's not a team player. By the end, she was the only one with energy, and she actually built the raft because they were tanked. So all their food sourcing, she was the only one that actually had energy. So in the end, she actually won out. All she was surviving on is water, mineral-rich water and sunlight. And she kept saying, my son's my energy. My son's my energy. Anyways, it was pretty funny, but that would be my approach. So
100%. That's a great story.
Yeah, it is. It's funny because I wanted to do that. My kids kept saying, Dad, you need to go on there and just be like,
crush it.
No need to look for food. I'm just going to fast for 21 days.
Yeah.
And, I promise you, I'd be running circles around all of them, right? Because they're like, completely, doing their food sources. And they get sick half the time eating crap that they shouldn't, right? But anyway, let's talk about testing, because I think that is something, we both agree. I don't think hair testing is great for heavy metals. But years ago, I had Dr. Andy Cutler come into my seminars and show people how to look at mineral imbalance or ratios as an indicator of certain heavy metal, too much heavy metals, too much mercury, too much lead, whatever it is.
Sure.
But, it's not a great thing to look at heavy metal in the body. However, it's the way to assess your minerals in general. Talk about that. And, I know that, and I'm going to give you a minute to talk about your products too here before we wrap up, but
sure.
Are we offering a test? Do your company offer a test? But talk about hair analysis.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have a really, really nice, really easy to use test kit. We found that so many people, when we first started, were struggling with the test kit that we had. So we just have continually improved from an information standpoint and packaging. And you can see a picture on upgradedformulas.com of that. And you can find a consultation there too, option, which almost no one offers.
Link for that. I'm sure we're offering a link for that. You can grab it.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be links, that you guys can provide in the show notes for people to make it easy and send them right there. I highly recommend a consultation because I think we'll have a second nutritionist here soon, but we have a full-time nutritionist now that I've trained myself that really knows how to go deep into this. And I got to say, more so than any other test I've ever looked at, all the value is in the details.
Always.
It really is. Like Dr. Pompa mentioned sodium and potassium earlier. That's a ratio that we look for. So what I love about this is that there's a number of different ratios we test for. and we've partnered with a couple labs that we really, really like and value their whole method and processing method. I don't believe, in fact, I know to be true that not every lab is created equal in anything, and certainly not for hair testing either. So we work with two right now that are really just, I think, the best in the game at what they do. They're incredible. So that's another thing to mention. What else? Yeah, the ratios themselves, I can tell if someone has mental disturbances, like severe levels of it, just by looking at a couple ratios. I can tell if someone's going to have dysregulated hormones just by looking at a ratio.
That's great. Yeah.
Like zinc to copper, if it's off, there's no chance the person will be healthy from a hormone standpoint. If sodium to potassium is off, there's no chance
Yeah,
that
what
the
people
person's
don't realize is zinc plays
Yeah.
such a significant role. I might reverse this because I'm completely dyslexic, but zinc is progesterone, copper is estrogen, or do I have it flipped?
You got it right. Yes.
I got it right. That's pretty amazing, actually. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But I mean, directly, zinc directly affects progesterone, et cetera. So, and that ratio really plays with those. So
100%. That is a great point that you make there. Iron to copper is another one, and this one is like important for anti-aging. You guys heard Dr. Pompa mention just oxidation, right? Free radicals. I think some of these diets that are really elimination diets are really problematic because they, without just going into it too much, if any diet has you consuming too much of something, it's going to fill in the blank. It's going to imbalance the rest of all the other key nutrients. So if you're taking in too much iron for any reason, what do you think that's going to do based on what we've already covered here? It's going to dysregulate a number of different things.
Yeah.
So that's really important. I mean, there's thyroid ratios that we look for.
Awesome.
Yeah. So there's and does this match up with blood is a question that I'm asked often, and the answer is blood, for better or worse, we know we can affect it in a day. We know that if you eat a really sugary breakfast, what happens if you test blood sugar within 3 hours? It looks like you're a diabetic.
Different. Yeah, blood is transient, meaning that it's transient. It's in the moment, right? Literally, you could measure your mineral contents in the morning, and it'd be different by the afternoon. Hair literally gives you a 6 month, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, yes, 6 weeks.
6 month view of what your minerals have looked like. Am I right on that?
Well, it's what we find is certainly okay, so I would say people should test if they're really sick, they should do it every 4 weeks. The average is 2 to 3 months.
Well, because you're actually changing it, and you want to see
exactly. You're changing it. So if you have something like 6 inches, we're in quarantine over here, and I haven't had a haircut in like 3 months. You get luckily I'll get one like this week finally. But if I were to cut off some of my hair, it's like six inches. That if I sent all of that in, that would be 6 months of data for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
What we find is that when we ask people to send in about 1 inch of hair, it takes the average person 4 to 8 weeks to grow that hair.
Okay.
So and what Dr. Mom is saying there is absolutely correct in that we are influencing those changes by doing. You don't have to do it with us, obviously. If you can find somewhere that can give you a great consultation, if you can find somewhere that can give you a great hair analysis, sure. But we've kind of figured it all out for you. But however you do it, you just got to test. Otherwise, you're guessing. Mm-hmm. And with you guys, you do the same thing on the polar opposite side, which is equally important, which is, hey, we got to get these heavy metals out of here, so we test too. So, testing is key, consultations are key, and then taking only the supplements that you need are key, and then stopping the consumption of supplements you don't need is also, I mean, I would say equally important from a chemical balance basis, right? Because if you're high in calcium and you're taking more calcium, I promise things are only going to get worse.
And I think with minerals, it's even more important, right? Just to hit those balances. So that's why you're here, right? That's why we're offering the test and the consultation. Just in finishing up, just for time's sake, I do want to give you a moment to say why your minerals, right?
Sure.
Obviously you're a believer. Why your minerals?
Yeah, certainly. So I understood, as I talked about earlier, that absorption was a real issue. And I eventually was able to work with a manufacturer that was already doing some great work, but I knew that we needed to make some improvements, make some tweaks. And I understood that we needed a really, really small microparticle mineral size. So as a chemical engineer, I understood process improvement. And I worked with them. We have a signed contract with them to reduce from a process standpoint, something that you could think of it as pre-digested, I suppose, in really layman's terms. But all I can say is when you take our potassium, you kind of feel a jolt of electricity. You take our magnesium, you feel a jolt. And it's because, you're putting electricity into your body, basically. These have electron driving force, and we don't do flavors. I'm sorry, it's not going to taste like fruit punch, but that because it blocks absorption. So what I've done is just created this line of minerals based on this understanding, so that people can actually support and reverse their mineral deficiencies, because life gets a whole lot better when you do. You live better, you love better, you have more energy to do things, because our electrical energy in our body is able to be measured from a number of different ways, the heart, brain, etc. To the extent, you could say that producing high voltage in the body is correlated to high output's correlated to high achievement's correlated to a high quality of life. High quality of life is what we're after. So
absolutely. And by the way, that's a great point. You don't create voltage with vitamin C. You create voltage with minerals.
Yeah.
You do, right? Think about it. They're conductive. And I just want to show this for your sake here, but I think it's a great label. But bigger size does matter. Bigger is not better. Showing that, this is just a good visual. Like there's a regular mineral, and then there's more of a nano size mineral, right?
So exactly. Thank you for showing people that. So anyone that's listening to this on the podcast can, I guess, check out the YouTube or something and see that most likely, and follow the links that they're provided. You can see that too. What Dr. Pompa was pointing to is the size of a red blood cell. Mm-hmm. And the size of that, we measure this in nanometers, which is a unit of measure for really small things. So the size of the mitochondria is ultimately what we care about. Yeah. And that's less than 1,000 nanometers, usually around 500. And anyway, that's only important to say that, look, the particle size matters. Size matters. It absolutely does. In this case, mm-hmm. Small and also stable is really, really important. So there are some companies that can make some really small particles, but in a liquid form, we want them to be stable too. And that's really important. So we want a consistent product that's consistent in every dose. And I just kind of apply my you get taught
engineers, man. Engineers are the brightest people. I always say the engineers are the minds that make it happen, right? So
thanks. We just know how to, we're super practical people. Yeah. So
it's true. Yeah, no, right. It's so true, actually. Yeah. So Barton, thank you. Yeah, thanks for being on. Honestly, it's an important topic, and I really can't believe it's taken me this long to get to the topic, but we've been waiting for you.
Oh, thank you.
Take advantage of the link. Take advantage of the test. Barton, appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for listening.
Well, that's it for this week. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. This episode was brought to you by Cyto Detox. Please check it out at buycytonow.com.
We'll be back next week and every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. We truly appreciate your support. You can always find us at cellularhealing.tv, and please remember to spread the love by liking, subscribing, giving an iTunes review, and sharing the show with anyone you think may benefit from the information heard here. And as always, thanks for listening.